Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Untitled Reviews. This being a show where it's about dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Kevin Can F Himself. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So obviously we have Patty and Allison talking to Nick, and I love that like Allison's kind of nervous about everything, and Patty's the one, I mean, they're both nervous, but they're just kind of trying to be, you know, it's like, right, so we're working out everything, and Nick's just kind of constantly telling Allison to shut up, you know, asking, oh, would she even want a receipt for the, and she's like, no, for, you know, the transaction and everything. I'm like, I wonder if it were different circumstances, would she actually want a receipt? I mean, granted, she knows she can't keep the receipt because that'd be like, well, for one, she knows he was just being a dick about, like, asking that, but also I'm like, yeah, that'd just be more evidence to lead your way, but obviously for him, it's like, they're going to give him $7,000 plus the pills as a down payment, so they need this kind of done, which Nick is like, all right. And, you know, even Allison went above and beyond. It's like, here's Kev, and here's a picture of him, but I've also worked around his schedule. That way we can, because she wants to kind of plan it out, know the ins and outs, but Nick's kind of like, I'll get to it. Like, what's the timetable? Like, Patty's like, soon? So he's kind of jumping on that. But Allison wants to ask a lot of questions, but Patty's like, stop it. You're talking to the guy, and she constantly reminds Allison the guy that murdered his stepdad and got away with it, which I'm like, oh, so that's why you're gung-ho about him, like, doing this for you. Well, part of me is like, with the way things kind of go in this episode, part of me wonders, like, is Nick actually the bad guy we think he is, in the sense that, is he really, like, or are we going to end up finding out he's actually an undercover cop or something? I don't know. I get this feeling like there's definitely going to be a twist with Nick. I mean, maybe it's just like things are just going to go wrong because they just do in this show. Like things aren't going to go the way Allison thinks they are. But I'm just wondering if there's going to be some twist where in actuality he's actually an undercover cop or something. So like Allison's kind of digging her own grave by setting this whole thing up. Well, if he was really trying to get her, he wouldn't really go through all this because they've already made the deal. So I'm like, no, that probably takes away. Because if he was a cop, he would jump on this immediately. So I think it takes away the whole. I was like, no, with everything associated with this past, like that was just something that popped in my mind. Now I'm saying it out loud. I'm like, no, that's stupid. It doesn't make sense. With his background, with the whole thing of potentially killing his own stepfather and getting away with it, there's no way he's actually a cop. It's just like, I was just wondering if there was something to that. But like I said, it just kind of. Talking about it out loud kind of got it out of my mind, but still, I just think things aren't going to play out the way they hope they will. I'm kind of getting a feeling like things are going to get so twisted that somehow he's going to end up dead. Now, whether it's like he ends up overdosing, someone else ends up killing him, the police can confront him in different situations, it turns into a shootout, he gets killed. We'll have to wait and see. But it's not going to be what Allison wants at the end. I mean, I think the ultimate irony would be if Allison, for whatever reason, ends up being the one that has to kill him. Once again, I'm thinking way, way, way in advance. We'll ultimately have to wait and see in that regard. But obviously, Allison is getting a present for Kevin because it's like, right, this chair, if I don't get it for him, he's just going to get it anyway. But even Patty's not all about it, you know. She's a little on edge, but Allison's a little bit more calm. She references, like, right, being on a plane and a swim meet, because when she was going to one of her swim meets, she was on a plane. It's like, right, once the plane's off in the air, you can't really do anything. You just got to accept it as it is. Like, you're just like, either the plane will stay flying or it will crash into the ground. Like, the only thing she has, like, all you can do is just leave it to the pilot. It's their responsibility. So all you can do is just kind of accept things because it's kind of out of your hands. And for her, it seems like this whole thing, now that they've set up the hit, like it's in Nick's hands. So, but it turns out like Kevin's birthday is special, or rather interesting, because he actually bounces back and forth. Like he has his dinner with Allison, but he immediately goes over to this other party to hang out with Neil and his dad, because it's a whole thing that Patty talks about where it's like, he doesn't want Allison or Neil to feel like they're not the most important people to him, so he goes to both events, pretend like everything is okay. But Allison's like, right, he makes some excuse to go into his car, and then he's going for like an hour and a half. She's like, honestly, I'm okay with it. Like, she's not pissed about it or anything. She accepts it because she's like, honestly, I'm able to kind of enjoy a nice dinner to myself. It's like, it's actually the thing she looks forward to in the year, throughout the year, because it's the only hour and a half piece she gets away from Kevin, you know? But even telling Patty is like, right, did you really think I was that stupid? And Patty's kind of like, yeah, I kind of thought you were that stupid. And then Allison's like, well, I kind of thought you were too. So it's that thing of like, right. But then Patty's almost like, oh, you want to go get drinks or something? I'm like, once again, Patty actually likes Allison now. Like, they've actually become legitimate friends. Once again, I always find that ironic. You've been family for 10 years, and neither one of you really liked each other, but now you've kind of gotten to know the real each other, so you enjoy actually spending time. But Allison's like, oh, I got to get to work. Obviously, she hasn't told Patty about the fact is that she's having an affair with her boss Sam. Like, that whole thing's happened. Well, that affair rekindled. So they're doing their thing. Patty shows up, super dolled up because she's getting. I was like, why is she getting all dressed up and stuff? Because she's like, I'm just gonna go home and enjoy a movie and stuff. Well, why is she getting dressed up like that? And then we find out it's to meet up with Ridgway. But then Ridgway is asking all these questions. I was like, so wait, did you get dolled up because you knew that this was a date or what? Like, I don't get. I guess maybe like to be in front of a cop, like to kind of be out. She felt like, no, I got to dress up, like got to get like super dolled up or something. But then it's like the moment like Ridgway makes it clear, like, oh no, I was gonna ask you questions about your siblings and stuff like that. But then if we want to, you can jump straight. I'm fine with just jumping straight into childhood trauma, which I was like, oh. Because I had a feeling that when Ridgway was like, oh, what are you doing Friday? I was like, that didn't sound like official police questioning. That sounded like a date, and it totally is. So I don't know whether, like, maybe Patty never really knew that thing about herself, that she was interested in women, or maybe it's a thing of it was always there, she just never, I don't know. Once again, Kurt was always just kind of like I settled. So it doesn't seem like she's too heartbroken about the breakup with Kurt. I think it's more so like, right, you were just kind of like, sadly, you were just kind of like a, why not type of situation. But honestly, being around Ridgway, Tammy, she really likes her a lot, because you can tell it's like them playing darts and everything. But obviously it's because of where they live too. It's kind of got that like that Boston element to it of like busting balls of like, oh, so I'm gonna go over there in the parking lot to find the dart that you just threw. So they're a little back and forth and them drinking and having fun. It is interesting, like because it's interesting, too, because, like, two other cops show up and, like, oh, so she's the latest recruit. And I'm like, I guess, like, Tammy's kind of bounced around. I guess it's not, she hasn't found, like, hasn't been in, like, a consistent relationship for a while or something. Maybe that's what that, like, I guess it's, like, fellow officers busting her balls about it. Because at first I was like, they're saying that, like, is she trying to, like, legitimately recruit her, like, in, like, a police sense? But no, it's just, like, I guess, like, is there a way of referencing, like, her relationship status and stuff like that? Which I love at the same time this is all going down. Allison is having her dinner with Kevin and everything. It's like, oh, cool. But then, like, Kevin starts to beef with a dude who's a hockey player who talks smack about, like, so it's a rivalry thing. And then, like, there's the Mighty Moo thing. That's an element to this. What makes things really awkward is that Sean shows up with Jen, and it's like Addison, and Sean has to correct her, Allison. And it's like, why did I think Addison? She's like, it's a better way. He's like, no, Allison's classic. It's like, cool, here's a dude that you're, like, you have strong feeling for, that you're having an affair with, and here he is with his wife. Because she explained that, like, she had something, like, a very special, like, something important to do. That's all she told Sean. Like, which does beg the question, why didn't you say that it was, like, Kevin's birthday? But to be fair, I guess you don't want to outright say that, because it's like, right, you don't want to ruin, like, the fun you and Sean are having by, like, spoiling it by referencing, yeah, let's forget about being significant others, because in that moment, it's like, oh, it feels like being 17 again. I even love Sam being like, I thought we weren't going to do this again. And she's just kind of like, no, you didn't. And I was like, that was just kind of like, I don't know, there's kind of like a sweetness to that, even though, once again, they're having an affair on both of their parts. But, yeah, which at first I noticed that at the restaurant. I was like, is that Nick? And she's stressing out the entire time when she realizes Nick's at the place. And I was like, oh, did she actually, because later on Patty points it out, it's like, he's not going to be stupid enough to commit a murder at his own place. Like, he's not crazy enough to do it. It's like, well, you said he's unhinged enough, that's why he's the perfect guy for the job, because he is unhinged. But also, like, also the fact is that, like, because I immediately was like, most likely he works there. I figured Allison was tripping, but for her, it's like, I don't know when it's coming, and that's driving her a little insane, because she ends up opening up to Patty, like, right, that whole thing I told you about the plane thing was a lie. Like, even the entire plane ride, I was nervous. So all that stuff, I was just trying to, I wasn't just lying to you, I was lying to myself. But Patty's like, right, you picked your pilot, you got to roll with it. And she's like, really? Because it's just they're in this situation because it's like, right, Patty's like, you wanted it, and this is going to get messy. Well, that's just the way it is because you pick someone messy. But then, like, Allison's kind of throwing it back at her. Because for one, it's like, right, you're on a date with a cop. Like, don't you think that's? But Patty tries to justify, no, like, she kind of likes me, but I could use that to our advantage. It's like, nah. you thinking about that afterwards, you know, that would have been the smart thing to kind of think. I wonder, or was she already thinking that? Was that the whole point, like, oh, I'm a doll up to get close to her? Like, maybe she already felt that from Ridgway, but then didn't realize, like, Ridgway, like, actually legitimately liked her. I don't know. Once again, she got dolled up, so that's why I was like, I feel weird saying the term dolled up, but you know, dressed up is the, you know, but, like, dolled up is always a terminology used to kind of describe, like, oh, when you kind of, like, get all fancy and dressed up, that I'm like, I don't know. Because even to the point, like, she was doing the eyelashes and everything, and she's like, oh, what am I stupid? Like, you've never seen her kind of, like, off-kilter like that. That's super not, at least the Patty we've come to know, you know? So, I just thought that was, I think that's actually kind of cute that she was kind of nervous about this. So that's why I'm like, she had to have gone into this knowing it was a date, but maybe she just didn't realize it necessarily. Like, she's going to like, all right, maybe she felt like what Ridgway was kind of throwing her way initially, like, you know, with the whole Friday meetup, and then she thought like, right, maybe I can try and sway the conversation, but not realizing like, oh no, Ridgway set you up on a date with her. I don't know what was really going through Patty's mind. But yeah, at the same time, you have Kevin dealing with Neil, you know, because it's like, you know, his dad's in the know about like what he's up to, but he's trying to bounce back and forth. He's even got like alarm set, because initially he was going to come over there, hang out with Neil the entire time, because Neil, you know, he's telling like Allison like, oh, I chose you over my brother. Neil, oh, I chose you over my wife, you know. And because Neil was very sensitive in that regard of just kind of like, probably if he did tell Neil the truth, Neil would probably have a breakdown. He's kind of a lovable idiot in his own right. I mean, in its own right, Kevin is too. And you know, that's actually the interesting thing. Like, I've actually, for most of this series, have taken Allison's side on things. Like, I was like, like, it's one of those things where it's like you're seeing that world through. It's kind of almost like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Those characters are terrible, terrible human beings, but you kind of root for them you know, because you know they're terrible human beings, but you kind of see the show from their perspective. I'm saying that for someone who's not the biggest, like, I've not watched a lot of. I do want to take some time at some point to watch a lot of Always Sunny, but I think that's kind of what's happening with Allison. She is kind of a terrible person. Like, yes, her husband sucks, but then, like, something else recently pointed out, like, oh yeah, Allison kind of sucks in her own regard as well, but I'm more Team Allison than I am anti-Allison, anti-Kevin. I'm more anti-Kevin than I am anti-both of them, you know? I'm more in Allison's corner than anyone else, because but, you know, once again, that could just be like, oh, like, I'm just, because maybe I made my mind up early on in the season, like, very much since it's being an AMC show, it's very much like Walter White. Like, despite all you've done, and yet you've done some shitty stuff along the way, I'm rooting for you to get away with everything. So I think it's that same mentality I'm having. So, but regardless, Kevin is going to try his best, you know, but then, like, because of the whole Sean Avery thing, it's like, nah, I got to beat that bastard. And I love them constantly bringing up, like, oh, it's a 32-ounce steaks with all the fixings, a shrimp cocktail, and a roll. Can't forget the roll. You have to get through, or it's like a free meal. And so it's one of those food challenges, which I was just thinking about Persona 5 earlier, and that's a thing in a Persona games where you can like do like a food challenge thing. It's a whole thing. If you're familiar with the games, you'll know what I'm talking about. It reminded me of that. I also love the awkward sit down between Sam, and Allison. It's just kind of like a whole like, oh yeah. And then there's that whole bit about like, oh, it makes, you know, it's like, oh yeah, it reminds us of like a first date back in high school and stuff like that. Yeah, well, this was their first date. It was like their first date when they moved back and stuff like that. It's like, oh, it's like, I feel like 17 again. And then because of that, I guess because of that remark, it pissed Allison off because she was kind of like smiling because it reminded her. I thought that was why Sam said it, to be reminiscent of like their time together. But then Allison was like, I hate being 17, because I think it was meant, I guess she interpreted it as a jab because you're saying that with your wife, but you know, but it's like right when the thing we had. So I think it's just pissing Allison off because it's like, right, you're with your wife and you're flaunting it in front of me, even though like we're here because you're like my husband's birthday and everything. So running into Nick trying to give him notes, even though Patty said not to do that. He's a crazy psychopath. Don't piss him off more than you already have. But he was kind of getting like really uppity about Allison just bothering him. He's like, dude, I'm just a waiter. We shouldn't be seen talking to each other. Like, if anything ever goes wrong, like, they'll kind of connect us if we get caught talking. Sam follows her and be like, well, what's up? Which, once again, she's getting pissed at Sam. And Sam is like, right, you're the one that didn't tell me about your husband's birth. She's like, fine, aren't we even? And, he's like, right, you're the one that's in control of it. And she's like, what, you think I'm in control? He's like, yeah, I do. I think you should start realizing that too. Because Allison feels like she's not really as in control of things as she thinks she is. Once again, it's that aspect of, and I'm sure this is some people who watch the show's perspective, is like, Allison isn't as much of a victim. Yeah, your husband kind of sucks, but you kind of suck as an individual too, because you're going straight to like, yeah, I'm gonna murder my husband just because he sucks. It's like easiest thing probably. Once again, that's a conversation that got brought up in the second episode. Like, wouldn't it be easier to get divorced? And she kind of snapped back at the person. Obviously, she was referencing this in the novel that she was quote unquote writing. But it is a thing of she is controlling and kind of manipulative in her own regards, just like Kevin is. And I think it's just a thing of you're able to see other people's flaws, you're just not willing to see yours. Like, the sad thing is, her and Kevin might be more of a match made in heaven than she'll even realize. That the reason why they've been the way they have been for so long is because she's just like him. Because, I mean, yeah, he's manipulative, but she's just as manipulative when you really think about it. Like, the fact is that she... like, the ruse that she's been playing recently, like, lying to him, setting up a hit, pretending like everything's okay. Like, even their party, like, yeah, his birthday party and everything, like, yeah, like, he's trying to bounce between time with her and with Neil, but also, like, the fact that she knows about it and she's not saying anything. So she can be deceptive and manipulative on her own right. Once again, I'm still more team Allison more than I am anti-Allison. Like I said, it's it's an interesting perspective. I never realized like how like on Allison's side I am and how wrong I probably am to be so on Allison's side. I should probably be like, no, you both suck, but it's like I can't help it. Like I said, I'm just more her than Kevin in that regard, obviously. I don't know if there's anyone that's necessarily team Kevin, but there's just probably like a lot of people who just aren't team Allison either, But like I said, I am, so... But hearing that from Sam about, like, her being a lot more in control, I mean, I can see why she kind of feels like she isn't, because she always feels like she's bottom of the barrel, like, everything, like, she feels like she's, for so much of her life, she's been run over. But I guess that's where things kind of come into, like, any point in time, you could have stood up and kind of changed your life, but you kind of accepted this role of kind of being the meekish wallflower that you are now. You are a lot more in control than you think you are. And so she takes that opportunity at the end of the episode to let Nick know what's what. It's like, yo, no, you shut up. You're going to tell me everything I want to know about. If I don't like it, you're not going to get paid. We're not going to do it. So you're going to tell me everything about how you're going to do it and when you're going to do it. We do things my way. And he's like, fine. She's like, okay. Once again, he's a psychopath, so pissing him off probably isn't the best idea, but I guess it's like, right, you got to show dominance, kind of like this stereotype of like being in jail, find the biggest, baddest person, knock them out to assert your dominance. I guess that's kind of what's supposed to happen in this regard. Once again, I get feeling like that's going to backlash on her in the biggest way, but we'll have to wait and see. Because he might decide, you know what, I'm going to take all that money and the drugs, and then I'm actually going to screw you over. He even told, because Patty was like, we're going to be okay, right? He's like, yeah, if I'm not anything if not like a reasonable person, which I'm like, when someone claims to be reasonable, they tend to not be the most reasonable person. So I can definitely see Patty not being as okay, like in the sense of like, right, he's probably going to do this for you, and then he's basically going to hold this over your head. It's like, no, you hired me to do this. I can cut a deal to screw you guys over because you set this whole thing up. So we're going to continue doing this for as long as I want to. You're going to get me more drugs, and we're going to continue our partnership. So I can definitely see Nick pulling something like that. Like I said, the bounce back and forth, regardless of everything, just to keep appearances up for Neil. I love for first, he's pretending to eat the food, but Neil's like, no, we need to eat twice as much so we can have the energy to play these games and get these tickets. So they're trying to get that foam hat. And Kevin eats even though he says he's not going to, and he has no room for the steak. And I also love that he like tried to buy tickets off this kid, but the kid was like, "Nah, these are going to help me out, so screw off." He's like, "Screw off," and Kevin literally just took the bucket from the kid. I thought that'd be more of an issue, but no. And I love the whole thing of like, "Why did you ditch us? Why are you wearing a tie? Why are you sweating? And why you smell like meat?" It's like, "Don't worry, Neil." And Kevin's dad's like, "I'm sure he can explain everything, answer all those questions in order." And Kevin did his best to actually answer it. It's like, "Oh yeah, like I figured I ditched you because I thought it would be better to divide and conquer. I have a tie because when it comes to collecting these tickets and playing these games, it's all business. I'm sweating because of the dance revolution thing I had to do to get these, and dancing is why I'm sweating, because I was over there by the and I smell the way I do because I was near the grill." And it's like, "Yeah, because the grill is over there with meat," so that worked out. So, but Kevin, near the end of the steak situation, he's almost there. There's literally a crowd around the two cops that Tammy had introduced to Patty earlier. Ended up, it's like, one's like, "Nah, I'm gonna do something I've never done before. I'm gonna bet on New York." And the other guy's like, "Nah, you can do this, Kevin." And ultimately Kevin passes out and kind of enters like almost a coma state. And then another well-known player appears before him. He's like, "You know what?" He's like, "This city needs me, but it also needs you, Kevin. Get it done." And Kevin does. And it's like, "Yeah, don't worry, Kevin. You get off scot-free going forward for anything." I'm like, that's not something you should ever say publicly as a cop, but whatever. Kevin has his victory. So everything works out in that regard. So at the end, we do see that he has the foam hat. Patty and Tammy, like, the moment Patty had come back from the bathroom from talking with Allison, she was kind of really shitty towards Tammy. So she kind of was a little self-destructive, because it's like, right, like, it probably isn't the best idea to be getting too close to a cop. Like, I think she recognized, like, she didn't like what Allison was saying, but I think there was enough truth to it. Like, right, I was kind of getting suckered into this, because I think for the first time in probably a long time, Patty was legitimately happy. And in that moment, Tammy's like, right, like, normally I'd write most people off in this situation, but there's definitely something here, like, or am I crazy? And Patty kisses her, and it's like, oh yeah, like, and it turns off like a little peck, but then like, oh, get in there type of kissing. So yeah, I don't see this just being a fling. Granted, she might still use it to her advantage, like she was suggesting to Allison, but we'll see. But I think with all the craziness that they're involved in, I think she wanted to also keep Tammy a bit of a distance. But, like, she likes what she likes. And, like, for the first time in probably a long time, she's actually getting something that, isn't just kind of settling. It's like, I want something, and I'm going to get it, So I think that's going to end up backfiring, but we'll see. It's going to be interesting to see where all of this ends up taking us. Allison has kind of doubled down, well, like I said, with the whole Nick thing of like, I need to know all the details. So it's going to be interesting to hear said details. Also, like, Nick is a bit of a dick, because the fact is the way he rolled up on Kevin and just stabbed the knife in the steak and freaked Allison out, because he knew it would freak her out, because he knew she'd be on edge. That's all he was doing, because he's the sociopath that he is. Because even Kevin's like, yeah, he handed that guy his knife. Why the hell he do that to mine? And it's like, oh, this guy's weird. So I'm very, very interested to see where the next episode takes us going forward with all of this. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, enjoy it, good day, and goodbye.